we're going to get started. My name is Larry Jewell. I am from the Edmonton Pride Seniors Group. Thank you all for attending our weekly Aging with Pride group for LGBTQ2S plus seniors and allies. Thank you to our partners, SAGE and the Pride Center of Edmonton. And before I introduce our speaker, is Bill Lee here? So it's being recorded in any event. I must acknowledge that we are located on Treaty 6 territories and respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our lives. A housekeeping item, this session will be recorded for future use on our YouTube channel. If you don't wish your image to be recorded, please close the video feed. And now to get to the point, and welcome back, Darrin. Darrin, as I think you all know, is a playwright, writer, composer, performer, and drag artiste who has written, co-written over 40 plays, many, perhaps most of which deal with gay issues in an exuberant manner, often with flamboyant, larger-than-life drag characters performed by himself. He founded Guys in Disguise Company in 1987 and has helmed the near-annual Loud Queer Cabaret since 1991. He has received 7 Sterling Awards and has been the writer-in-residence at the University of Alberta, the Edmonton Public Library, and MacEwan University. We are absolutely delighted that he is able to join us again. And over to you, Darrin.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I'm so sorry I'm late. It's been a crazy morning. My husband broke his knee a couple of days ago, and I had to get him sent off to the doctor, and he's just pulling up in a taxi cab now, so I may have to go open the door in a couple of seconds. So just so you know, life is happening all around us as we sit on Zoom. And this morning just completely got away from me, and Google Mail hides Zoom links sometimes. I just can't find them. So anyway, my apologies. I pride myself on being on time. So I'm going to chat for a bit until my husband's up the walk and I can step away from the table just for a second to open the door for him and let him get settled. And then I've got some monologues to read for all of you. Does that sound like sort of some fun? Yeah. I'm a monologuist at heart. My very first play was The Edmonton Queen, Not a Riverboat Story, which was a solo show. And I've often told aspiring writers and actors that deciding to do a one-person show is the most arrogant decision you'll ever make in your life. Actually getting through the first performance is the most humbling experience that will ever happen to you. And so I dove in with both feet into what is probably one of the most difficult forms of sort of presenting theater. And I kind of got hooked on it. And part of it is that I don't have any acting training, but I'm a good communicator. And so for me, the solo show format seemed like a really easy and natural way to be able to just talk to people, which is what I love to do. I've always been good at that. And it's something that I really enjoy doing because I have a genuine fascination for people. And so I followed it up next year with my second one-person show, which is Tornado Magnet, A Salute to Trailer Court Women, where I played my mother, telling stories of growing up in the trailer court. And I was really lucky coming out of the gate because, 1 second, I'm going to go open my front door for my husband right now. I'm really sorry about this. Hang on a second. I can't put it on there. You sure? Okay. There we go. Thank you for indulging me. It's cold to be out on crutches today, that's for sure. So I had to make sure he got into the house okay. I was very lucky because when I did my very first one-person show in the Edmonton Fringe, a publisher saw it and offered me a book deal literally at the end of the performance that day. And so it's one of those publishing discovery stories that most writers dream of. And I was actually lucky enough that it happened to me. And so Tornado Magnet was a play that it kind of intimidated me because the Edmonton Queen was kind of a gift. It just kind of sort of landed. It flowed out of my fingers and into the typewriter. But the Tornado Magnet, I had to work really hard because I had to craft that play. Edmonton Queen was a story that was bursting to be told. Tornado Magnet, I had to figure out what the story was. Plus, I was writing about my mother, which made it a much more complex experience for obvious reasons. But ultimately, those two plays launched my writing career, but they also launched sort of the idea that I could take my theater across the country. And so Tornado Magnet has now been produced in Whitehorse, Red Deer, Calgary twice, Edmonton many times, Fort Macleod, Meacham, Saskatchewan, Regina, Winnipeg, and Ottawa as at the National Arts Centre so far, with hopefully more on the way sometime. I'm trying to get a production of it in the States because if anyone understands trailer trash culture, it's United States of America, particularly Florida. So I'm thinking of rewriting it with sort of a climate change. Yeah, that got a laugh or two. I'm thinking of rewriting it with a bit of a climate change warning kind of bent and seeing if the trailer courts of Florida will respond to it. We'll see. And so I thought I would be, because I do monologues and I love monologues. And even when I do a play that's got multi-characters in it, often one of the characters will stop and do a monologue. And so I thought I would let you peek inside my process a little bit and share some of these monologues with you. Not the long ones, but a couple of the smaller ones that are within the show. And so a few years ago, Lunchbox Theatre, well, it was actually 2009, Lunchbox Theatre in Calgary had a submission contest or deadline, submission deadline, where you would pitch them plays. And I pitched them, I had this idea of a drag queen and a straight guy stuck somewhere. And that's all I knew. And I called it About the Girl Next Door, because it was all about him watching her through his keyhole or peephole in his apartment and not understanding who this gigantic drag queen creature was in his hallway. And so I pitched that at them and they actually said, let's have a meeting. And so I went and talked to Lunchbox Theatre and I had a couple of pages and that was about it, but they agreed that it was an interesting enough premise that they wanted to explore it. To be clear, Lunchbox had never presented a drag character on stage before, ever. So, because they tend to be, Calgary is a more conservative city, but also Lunchbox is a very conservative kind of company in the middle of a very conservative city. So they played to the business types in the towers around the theater. And so I started to work on this play. We went down and did a workshop and I had a stage direction. I ultimately, my friend Neon and I were in my Boardwalk Manor tower and the elevator was always getting stuck. And so Neon and I were leaving my building and the elevator went ka-chung, chung, 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 chung. And Neon said, you should write a play about this elevator. And I went, what a great idea. So I decided to take the straight guy and the drag queen and put them in an elevator together. And that would be the play. That's all I knew. I still didn't know anything more than that. So I had written a few pages of these people stuck in an elevator. And there was a stage direction that as the drag queen entered, it said, she's dressed like a giant Christmas tree. And I was using that as a metaphor. I wasn't being literal. I just thought, big, sparkly, loud, jangly is what I was thinking. And the director of the workshop said, so she's dressed as a Christmas tree. I went, well, no, not literally. And then I went, or is she? And then I went, why would she be dressed as a Christmas tree? And we decided that it was because she was on her way to the gay bar to enter the Miss Christmas pageant, so she could be the Christmas queen. And suddenly the entire play fell together in that moment. And it's so interesting to think, I think people think you have the play all figured out when you start to write it. No, I started writing this play several times before it actually kind of gelled into that moment. Once we knew why she was dressed as a Christmas tree, then the stakes of why she was heading out and why it was so awful for her to get stuck in an elevator on her big night became really apparent. And so I changed the title of the play to With Bells On, and because she was covered in bells. And I was inspired by those Holt Renfrew Christmas trees where you have the silver tinsel tree with the red balls all over it. That was what her costume ended up being. And so and it was 2010 when the very first production got produced by Lunchbox Theatre. And it was about 40, now remember Lunchbox Theatre, the show has to fit within the lunch hour for the business people in the towers. They eat their lunch and they watch a comedy or a play or a Christmas show. So it was about 40 or 45 minutes. It was a short play. And it was a huge hit. Like people went crazy for it. They just loved it. And it was the whole shtick is that the drag queen is big and tall like me, because I've been in drag on elevators before, so I know what I'm talking about. And the guy was the little short guy, so that all the physical power in the elevator went to the drag queen. So it wasn't the whole straight guy who's like, big straight guy who's going to be menacing to a drag queen. It was the exact opposite. The drag queen is the scary one, is kind of the way I wanted it to be. And so we had Stafford Perry, who's this little short guy. He was next to Paul Welch, who was 6'6" before he put on high heels. In fact, when we brought in his first costume, he had a big star headpiece. We had to cut it because he was actually too tall for the 8-foot tall elevator set. So we did the first version of the show in 2010 at Lunchbox, and it got nominated for Best New Play. It was a big hit, sold like hotcakes, and they said, let's do it again sometime. So then we brought it to Edmonton and did it at Theatre Network for 3 Christmases in a row. And it was so much fun. And it was one of those plays. Sometimes, you always want to create that piece of theater that everybody loves. I mean, that's what we all want. We want people to come to our shows, laugh, fall in love with it, feel like they've had a beautiful evening out, be moved by it. And this play just never missed. It was just kind of amazing. It was this beautiful little gift. But when we brought it to Edmonton, I thought, 45 minutes is a little short. So I actually added the story of a high-speed chase that I had witnessed, that I was coming home from the Street Performers Festival, and where, where I had done my mermaid tail costume and a whole bunch of other things. And I was unloading my car in front of that same building, the tall building on Saskatchewan Drive. And literally, there was a high-speed chase. 2 criminals were being chased by a cop car, and they went right past me. And it was one of those moments where I'm standing there holding wigs and a mermaid tail and 3 accordions and all this stuff, and suddenly real life goes right past you. And as this Bonnie and Clyde straight redneck couple were escaping the cops, they drove right past me, and I could see them go, "We're gonna get caught. We're gonna get caught. We're gonna get..." What the fuck? One of those moments. And I thought, what's it like to be like running away from the cops and to have a drag queen suddenly in your path carrying all this stuff? Like, that's a story they're probably going to take to their grave. So I added that little story into the show. And then when I was so a few years went by, the show got produced over and over again. It got taken back to Calgary. Then it got produced in Kelowna. And then actually it got produced. Oh, then my friend Christopher Peterson, who's a big drag queen in a female impersonator in Key West, Florida. He called me up and said, I watched the video for With Bells On. I love it. I'm going to direct it in Key West with your permission. I went, absolutely. So it's like, yay, it's finally going to get produced in America. And by this time, it had already been produced in Ireland as well, which was really exciting. My very first play to be in Europe. And so Christopher was working on the show, and he called me up and he went, yeah, it's about the length. I went, what are you talking about? It's an hour. And he went, yeah, it's a little too short. Can we add to it? I was like, oh, it's hard because we've done that play for years. What would you add? And Christopher knew the actual story of the mermaid, why I had the mermaid tail in the car chase scene. There's a really good story behind it. He went, can you tell about the time the kids taunted you as a mermaid? And I went, no problem. And so I wrote this monologue to go into the play, to add like a little 5 minutes to it. Now, this was an actual event that happened to me when I was working my very first year at the Street Fest. We're probably talking 1994, maybe 93. And it was my very first time doing the Street Fest. And I decided that I would take my mermaid costume and take it out to the Street Fest and introduce it to the kids. I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story. I'm going to read you the monologue instead. So this is an example of how a real life incident can work its way into my drama 20 years later. So here we go. My very first professional, just so you know, this is about the 3/4 point in the play. They're stuck in the elevator and they finally have started to talk to each other and treat each other like we're in this situation together. We got to get out. So they're starting to confess their secrets a little bit. My very first professional gig was last month. It was a great idea on paper. I was hired to entertain at a street performer festival. And I told all the girls at the Magical Crystal Palace that I had booked my first real gig, and they laughed at me. But I said to them, just wait. My picture will be in the paper. I'm going to be a star and leave all this behind. Anyway, I figured in this day and age, drag queens are kind of everywhere. So I wanted to do something that the kids would love, not just drag, but something just for them. And so I had this mermaid tail made. Kids love mermaids. What could go wrong? So I get to the gig. I'm carrying the mermaid tail in a garbage bag. Now this tail, once it's on, you can't really walk anywhere, right? Because it's a giant fin, right? So I have to find a place to pose and flap my tail. Lucky for me, there's a trailer in the middle of the park being used as a ticket booth. So I arranged for the nice man with the ladder to meet me at the ticket booth. I climb up and I sit on the edge of the roof and I pull on the tail. From my perch, I can see the whole park. It's a beautiful sunny day, happy people everywhere. But I kind of miscalculated. First of all, it's July and it's noon, and I'm on a hot tin roof in an outfit that basically amounts to a spandex body sock. Within 5 minutes, I start to fry on one butt cheek. I already feel like a well-done fish stick. And plus, little kids don't look up when there are clowns and balloons and face painters at eye level. None of them are even seeing me. But then I see this little boy, maybe 4 years old, and he looks bored with all the stuff in front of him. So I wave, and he waves back. I flap my tail. His eyes light up. Finally, I'm having an impact, bringing joy to a tiny corner of the world. He calls out, "Hi, little mermaid." Obviously, I'm far enough away that he doesn't notice that I'm large enough to capsize a Russian fishing boat. I call back, "Hey, kid, how's it going?" And his jaw drops, and I realize I've made a horrible mistake. I used my own voice. And even at the best of times, I sound like a trucker. He starts peppering me with questions, really hard questions. "How did you get way up there? Can you fly?" I explain that I have fairy wings. "No, you don't. Mermaids don't have wings." Not only does he not get sarcasm, but I think he knows the rules of mermaids better than I do. "You should be in the water. How come you're not in the water?" He points at the City Hall reflecting pool. I try and explain that the tail is foam and that it'll drag me to the bottom of the pool in seconds, but he keeps asking questions, so many questions. "How come your voice is so low?" I explain that it's a modern era and that gender is fluid. I try and ignore him. A group of businessmen stroll by. I strike a pose, arm high in the air, but by doing that, my clamshell bra slips and my nipple is exposed. The kid screams, "I just saw your boy tit." Now he has the upper hand. I look around, desperate for an escape. The little boy, surgical and effective and unstoppable, goes in for the kill. "You can't be a mermaid. You are a man." And then he starts chanting in that sing-song voice every kid seems to know from birth. "You are a man. You are a man. You are a man." It was noon, and that meant the entire park was full of preschoolers. And as soon as they heard someone being mocked, they swarmed towards the trailer like piranhas that smell blood in the water. They looked up and joined in the chant, "You are a man, you are a man." Now, I have a good comeback for any situation. Drunk hecklers, stupid frat boys, religious freaks. But how do you tell a bunch of preschoolers to shut the fuck up? You don't. Everyone said showbiz would be hard, even cruel. And if it had stayed a secret, that would have been the end of it. But the next day, the photo of me with the kids taunting me was on the front page of the entertainment section. And then there was that video clip on the 6 o'clock news. And then it went viral. Everyone has seen it. And now every time I walk into the Magic Crystal Palace, all the other queens chant, "You are a man, you are a man." Tonight is my chance to redeem myself. Sometimes you got to step up to the plate, do something that scares you. For you, it's giving up your trappings and setting out on your own. And for me, it's getting up in front of everyone and showing them what I am, who I am. So that's my mermaid tale. And that's a true story. And I actually have the front page of the entertainment section of the Edmonton Journal. And it almost makes me cry when I think about it. It's a picture of me in my mermaid tail. I'm on top of the ticket booth, and there's this little boy with his back to the camera looking up at me. And literally 5 seconds after that beautiful picture was taken, my life turned to shit for the next 2.5 hours. And I actually had clowns. Really, like, street performing is a tough business. You got jugglers, you got clowns, face painters. They've been out on the street working the real, sort of the hardcore face-to-face with the unwashed public. And they've seen a lot of shit in their times. But yeah, they all felt really sorry for me when they saw me being taunted by kids. Because how do you tell them off? Like, what do you do when a bunch of kids come at you like that? All you can do is Well, and there's not a parent in sight, of course. You got 15 kids on a rope with one teacher. They can't control that kind of a situation. So that's some of the pitfalls of, and actually that all happened in Churchill Square, right downtown. And Churchill Square and the City Hall reflecting pool and City Hall have been the site of many moments of drag humiliation in my career. The other one, I won't read the whole story because I don't have the book handy, but the other one is when I was hired to go-go dance at the base of the City Hall clock tower at the stroke of midnight at the First Night Festival on New Year's Eve. And I fell off the go-go platform and broke my high heel and spent New Year's Eve in the countdown in a back alley trying to get to my truck with a broken high heel in drag all by myself. It was kind of pathetic and sad, but I'm the Charlie Brown of drag queens. That's the way I always look at it. So now give me 2 seconds here and I'm going to look up the other monologue that I wanted to read you today. But one of the things I don't really write fiction. I love taking stuff that I've actually experienced in my life and turning that into theater, because there's something about the reality of pulling something from a real experience that just makes it into, there's just details that occur that would never occur to you as a writer. So here's another monologue. This is, okay, first of all, wait, I have to look up one more thing. Dapple Gray. So during the pandemic, I actually did a lot of writing for Edmonton City as Museum Project, which is the e-camp, we call it. And I was writing a whole bunch of queer history stuff. Sorry, now I'm trying to do something and search for things and look for an article at the same time. So let me just see here. Dapple Gray Cafe. Hang on a second. Oh, and my phone is going crazy. Roni, okay. There we go. Good, here we go. Perfect. Okay, so this is a story of well, you know where Chicago Deep Dish Pizza is right now, behind the old Edmonton Journal building, right at the end of the hill. It's a tiny little unassuming building next to what was the original Citadel and the Marvell Beauty College. That little tiny Chicago Deep Dish Pizza place. When I first moved here in 1982, it was actually a very famous little all-night queer cafe called the Dapple Gray Cafe. And it was I'll read you more about it in a second, but it kind of thrived. It was the only all queer restaurant that was open all night, and it was perfectly situated so that the people that were cruising on the hill could also stop and take advantage of a beautiful meal. So I'm going to read you just a little bit about a story that occurred in that building from this article that I wrote. Here we go. Okay, so the Dapple Gray Cafe played a brief but vibrant role in the late night gay scene, due in part to its location next to the Marvell Beauty Academy, where by day, many a hairdresser and beautician learned their trade. It also had a convenient proximity to the then notorious gay cruising strip along McDonald Road, high atop McDougall Hill. By day, McDougall Drive was sunny and quiet with a beautiful view of the river valley and the buzzing traffic below. By night, it was a one-way circular drive of sin. In the late 1960s, the hill became a place where gay men would look for men like them, eventually joined by the hustlers. In the late 70s, female and trans sex workers joined the crowd on the hill. This nonstop traffic fed bars like the Greenbrier a block away with its dark, smoky taverns, populated by a bookie or a sex worker or a journalist or two. In the early 1980s, we're at a time when the hill was often postered with bright yellow printed warnings of anti-gay violence. The LGBTQ community's growing visibility was not without backlash, and the city had been rocked in May of 1981 by the Pisces bathhouse raid. Every queer person knew that the threat of violence was never far. There were tales of van loads of angry straight youths showing up and attacking with baseball bats, stories of queers scattering in every direction, still more tales of queers fighting back and straight guys fleeing. And so it was common and common sense to meet someone on the hill, take them for coffee or breakfast at the Dapple Gray Cafe, and then get a good look at them before heading into the night together. So it eventually became a restaurant called Cheddar's, and I'm going to jump forward in the story a little bit. So it was 1986. Here we go. In 1986, I was working at Flashback, and Kevin, my husband, called me at home to say that a friend of ours had been killed by the person that he had taken home from Flashback that night. And it was the first time that I had ever felt that kind of violence kind of invading our safe space. And it was a real coming to awareness kind of moment for all of us, I think. So I'm going to jump into that story a little bit. Louis Versailles was a casino dealer at ABS Casino who would often head to the infamous Flashback Club in the Warehouse District to work as a waiter after his shift at the casino. One tragic summer evening in 1986, Versailles took the wrong man home from the nightclub. Louis was found dead the next morning, stabbed with a knife from his own kitchen. Word swept through the tight-knit gay community that there was a murderer posing as a gay cruiser, lurking in the darkness and anonymity of the scene. The killer had been seen by a few patrons of Flashback, and the community had a description. One of the people who in the bar that night who had witnessed Louis leaving with the new stranger was John DiCarlo. Now, John DiCarlo was a regular on the drag stages of Edmonton's gay underground. His drag alter ego was Laurie St. John. She had even run for the position of Empress of Edmonton more than once. His day job was working as a waiter at Cheddar's, which is what Dapple Grey Cafe used to be. The night after the murder, John was walking past the hill on his way to work when he spotted the man that had left with Louis. In a remarkable moment of courage, he approached the man, giving no indication that he knew who the man was. DiCarlo pretended to rent the young man for the night, but he convinced the killer to go for coffee at the Dapple Grey Cafe first. He sat the man at the table, ordered them breakfast, and excused himself for a moment. Away from the table, DiCarlo called the police and turned the man in, and then sat down and waited for the police to arrive and arrest the murderer. The community finally exhaled, relieved, but the resulting trial illuminated how vulnerable the community was to attacks from enemies and how little protection they had from homophobic violence. At the 1986 annual coronation ball held at the Masonic Hall on 100th Avenue that summer, right across the parking lot for the restaurant where he had turned the murderer in, the drag community gathered to crown the new empress, and while they did it, they actually gave Laurie St. John a special medal of courage from the drag community that year. So that's a true story. That was 1986. My husband Kevin went to almost every day of that trial. It was really, really tragic. And it's such a powerful story that it has kind of made its way into many of my plays in one way or another, the character of Laurie St. John, but also the story of the arrest. And so I've got a play that's never been produced called The Glory, the Fury, which is all the dark drag stories that I couldn't fit into the Edmonton Queen. And so this is kind of me putting that story into a theatrical setting. So the character, basically the play is about, it's kind of like picture the Macbeth for drag queens. So it's basically all about the old queen who I call Mary Queen of Scotch is about to step down and relinquish the reins of power. And all the other queens, her ladies in waiting and her drag daughters all start scheming and murdering and manipulating each other to try and decide who's next. So this is near the end of the play. Mary Queen of Scotch, one of the reasons that she's decided to move on is because she's just lost another sister of hers. And one of them I sort of fictionalized to use the story of this murder. So this is Mary Queen of Scotch by herself in a moment of reflection at her mirror. Mary Queen of Scotch is having a drink alone at her mirror. She is stripped of her royal regalia. She looks sad and old. In my ending is my beginning. Some famous queen said that once. Wonder which one it was. This one's for you, Rachel. She pours a shot. To the queen. She gulps it down. She pours another. This one's for you, Sarah. To the queen. She gulps it down. This one's for you, Grindle. To the queen. She gulps it down. Dear sweet Grindle, to you I owe my legend. You provided me with my beginning. While we waited for a killer to be caught, the police did nothing. Everyone in the palace lived in fear. I decided that it had to end, and so I took matters into my own hands. When I saw him on the strip, I recognized him right away. And he was out looking for another one. That fucker, he wasn't satisfied with just one. Here it was the very next night, and he was already hunting. The blood on her cream-colored broadloom hadn't even dried, and he was already looking for the next one, so I said hi. I knew it was him as soon as he looked over. I spent a lot of my time watching him that night. I saw them leave together. She had swooped in on him like a fucking vulture. So I asked him if he was free. He said he cost. I said, that's not what I meant, but how much? He said $20. And I said, well, for $20, I can at least buy you dinner too. They never eat enough. He said, okay. I knew he would. I took him to the Dapple Grey, asked for my usual booth. We sat down and I ordered us the dapple gray all-night breakfast. I tried making small talk, but I kept looking at him as if I could see the part of him that could kill, but he looked totally normal. I tried to picture those fingers holding the knife from her kitchen drawer, slashing at my friend. Instead, they just tore at a napkin. Did they have sex first? Was she just lighting that queen-size cigarette basking in the glow? Or was she just taking off her coat, anticipating his skin, his lips? I looked at his lips. Did she kiss him? Kiss me. He said, no, no fucking way. I said, I'm paying. They know me here. No one will say anything. Kiss me. When his mouth opened against mine, I memorized him. If you can't pick out a killer by how he looks, there must be something else, something coming from inside, something you can only sense up close. I just breathed in, and then I knew. Because I have never tasted fear like that, coming off of him in waves like heat, and he shook, and his breathing got faster, and then I touched his cock, and it was rock hard, and that's when I knew he fucked her, and then he stabbed her through the heart. Oh, look, breakfast. Hungry? You eat. I have to tinkle. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Fantastic. Even in this light, even at this age. My switchblade was right under my bra. It would be so simple to just cut him, because he couldn't catch me by surprise. Not now. Not anymore. But I called the cops instead, and I went back to the table. How's the hollandaise? The yellow stuff. It's the specialty here. Slow down. Are you in a hurry or something? Take your time. We have all night. The more we talked, the more normal it seemed. He was smooth, cool as a cucumber. So this is a killer. Looks like just another fucking guy. Oh, look, my friends are here. You'll like my friends. By the way, asshole, the next time you slice up in a queen, you make sure she ain't a friend of mine or I'll cut your cock off. First time I've ever been happy to see a pig arrive. Book 'em, boys. Excuse me. Refill, please. Thank you. To the queens. So that monologue has never been done out loud before. So that's the first time I've ever had a chance to do that one. And it's a good example of how you can take real life and fictionalize it and keep all the pieces that made it dramatic and then put it into a new light. So I really believe in keeping some truth at the base of all the theater that I do. I don't know, what else? Should I read another monologue? Is that okay with everybody? I've got a couple more I could do. Yeah, okay, I'm getting a thumbs up or two. Good. So I've got, it's from the same play. So back to With Bells On just for a second. A few years ago, like when we were doing the show at the Roxy before it burnt down, there was a director in town from New York, and this director originally hailed from Edmonton. In fact, we're about the same age, but he moved just as I started to do drag. He moved to New York to start a career in the States. So we never met in all our years of being Edmonton artists. He lived in New York, I lived in Edmonton. We never knew each other. And so he came to town one Christmas because he still has family here in Edmonton. And he was looking for, like, what do I take my parents out to see for Christmas? Oh, look, there's a drag Christmas play happening at the Roxy. So he took his parents to see With Bells On, and he fell in love with it. And so he sent me an email, this is about a decade ago, saying, oh my God, I would love to turn that play into a musical. And I said, sure, let's do it. And then the pandemic hit and he had a divorce and things went, a whole bunch of years went by. And in the middle of the pandemic, he emailed me again and said, are you still up for this idea? And I was like, it would thrill me to no end to see a musical version of With Bells On. And so he said, good, because my friend and I have been working on it. And we ended up having a meeting, and he wanted to fill in, like, when you turn a play into a musical, there's a lot of stuff you have to add. You have to kind of blow the play up, explode it, and add all this beautiful stuff that can be sung. And so he was looking for material for song lyrics, and I sent him my book. I also sent him this play, The Glory of the Fury, because it has a few monologues that are truthful and very honest about my early beginnings as a gender fluid person, if you will. And so when I finally got to see a reading of the show, there was one song that actually made me cry, and it was based on this monologue that I'm about to read for you now. So this is, where did I put it? Hang on a second. There's so many things on my computer top here. Hang on a second, Donna. Donna Mankind, there it is. Perfect. Okay. So this is actually, this is me as a little boy. When I was young, I didn't spend a lot of time looking in the mirror. I didn't believe the face I saw looking back. It just didn't seem real. So I would go into mother's room and open her drawer full of all the beautiful lacy things. And there, at the back corner of the drawer, was her jewelry box. I opened it, hardly daring to breathe. The jewels were cool as I took them carefully out, but they warmed in my hands as I moved them in the light. I would put the earrings on first. They touched my neck in the most graceful, feminine way. They were so long that I had to stretch my neck and spine to allow them to move freely. Thus, I learned bearing. The rings were next. Their weight made my hands move and flutter in spite of themselves. Thus, I learned gesture. Her bracelets were too large for me, but I slipped them over my tiny wrists anyway. The only way they wouldn't fall off is if I held my hands up. Thus, I learned presentation. They jangled as I reached for the necklace, 4 strands of crystal interrupted by tiny seed pearls. The necklace rested like warm ice on my chest. Thus, I learned the art of glamour. And then I would look in the mirror again. Look at me. Look at you, my friend. You'd never lie to me. There she was, just like I knew she was. And then I would put it all back. I did this for months. I would wait for everyone to leave because even then I knew I had to keep her a secret. I don't know how I knew that. At first, it was enough just to see her in the mirror. But the more she saw of herself, the more she demanded. And after a while, a brief glimpse was not enough. She needed more. My mother walked in one day. She didn't say a word, just helped me put it all back in her jewel box with the silver lock. And the next time I snuck into her room to dress up again, the jewels were gone. Mother locked the princess away. I couldn't cry because to do so would be to admit that she had existed at all. And because she was invisible, her passing went unnoticed except by me. And I mourn her to this day. But I resolved that if I were ever lucky enough to see her again, I would drag her into the light of day. I would never hide her, and I would never allow her to be taken from me, never again. Because something that beautiful has to be adored or it won't survive. That kind of fragile beauty withers without attention. Beauty has to be viewed or it means nothing. Until tonight, I've only dreamt about it. But there it is, as real as the ground I stand on. They command the sky around them, filling it with the shine from their jewels. This is what I meant. This is what I've been waiting for. This is my life now. So that's kind of how Gloria was discovered or born. Wow. Okay, that one kind of fucked me up a little bit. I'm always surprised at the emotional wallop I experience from reading some of these monologues out loud, especially the ones from the plays that haven't been done, because you sort of write them and then you put them away and you hope someday that someone will do the plays and then they just become like The Glory, the Fury. It's been, I think, 15 years since I started writing that play, maybe longer, and it's never been produced. So, do you guys want to do some questions? I completely forgot to say that there was a language warning before I talked, and I just realized as I was dropping F-bombs all over the place. So my apologies if anyone's offended. Does anyone want to do questions, or do you want me to keep reading? It's up to you. Oh, someone had a comment. Wow, you give an emotional wallop as well. Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one, because sometimes it's lonely going through that by yourself. We could do questions if anyone has any about process or other work, or I could just read some more monologues. What is the consensus? I never know how to do this.
Can we do both?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to do some questions first and then I'll read a little bit to close?
Just the question I have is I'm wondering, you seem to have 3 books available.
Yeah.
Queering the Way to NATO Magnet and Edmonton Queen.
Yes.
So are any of the material you presented today found in any of those?
No, And that's how much stuff I've got. Queering the Way is mostly by other people, because it was a collection of 22 writers from the Loud Queer Cabaret that we did over the years. And so it's a whole bunch, it's mostly Edmonton queer writers, a couple from New York and a couple from Toronto, but mostly Edmonton. And then I wrote the intro, and it's actually, you can find the foreword that I wrote online, and that'll tell you all about the context of the cabaret and whether or not you want to buy the book or not. But what's interesting, and this is a very interesting little piece of queer history that nobody has mentioned, but it was the second or third year of Loud and Queer. And back then, it was a very, I don't want to say a closeted event. It was a very exclusive and private event, because there was lots of people that were there that didn't want to be associated with, they couldn't afford to be associated with a queer festival, even as an audience member. So we never took pictures of the audience. We only publicized the event within the queer community, not in the main media. And then about the second or third year that we had done the festival, we actually got a call from ITV, which is now Global. And they wanted to do a piece on Loud and Queer. We thought it was a theater preview, so we had long meetings about it, because it was a big step. You know, it was all about like, here we are, Loud and Queer. And we decided that it was finally time to sort of go public with the event. And because up until then, it had been only members of the community that even knew about it. And so the ITV sent a reporter named Bonnie Fox to interview actors, writers. They filmed us working. And then they, the night before the cabaret happened, there it was on the ITV News. And the story was called, "You Paid for It, Your Tax Dollars at Work." And it had been a total sting, because they wanted to show that people's tax dollars were being wasted on queer art. And guess who one of the fucking spokespeople was for that interview? Jason Kenney, president of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, saying, you know, you don't want your tax money spent on this ridiculous excuse for theater. And I got to say, you know, my gaydar went off the second I saw that closet case on TV. I went, there's a frustrated homosexual if I've ever met one. But that's just between us. Anyway, there was a bit of a protest. A whole bunch of the sponsors of the event were really upset at what ITV had done to us, because they kind of presented it to us like, we want to help you promote your event. And then they turned us into a scandal. And so we, Ruth Smiley, who was the artistic director at Catalyst Theatre at the time, she actually launched a complaint with the CRTC, and they found that ITV had in fact misrepresented themselves, and we got an apology from ITV. And it was kind of interesting, because I think it was the first time that I can think of where the arts and culture community was treated like shit by the media, and they actually fought back and won. And if you Google Jason Kenney, Ruth Smiley, Loud and Queer, CRTC, you'll actually find the entire decision is online if you want to read it. If I'd known that was coming up, I would have sent the link. I could actually send it to you afterwards if you want. But if you Google CRTC and Jason Kenney and Loud and Queer, you'll find it. And that'll give you a blow-by-blow of exactly how they came to the decision. But yeah, ITV reprimanded Bonnie Fox, the reporter, and decided that in fact, even though they didn't have to disclose what angle the story was going to take, that in fact, in this case, they had misrepresented it. Not only that, but they outed people by putting, like, they showed one of the actors and then it said openly homosexual underneath his name. He was straight with a wife. Like, they didn't even check. They just assumed that everybody in the room was queer. Well, back then, you know, it wasn't a rule that you had to hire queer actors. We just hired whatever actors were available for the weekend. So we had one queer actor and three straight actors. So they put the straight people on camera and then said that they were gay. So they didn't even do their due diligence. But yeah, that was my first encounter with Jason Kenney. And so every time my mom wonders why I hate Jason Kenney so much, I go back to that story, because yeah, I had great reason to not trust that prick right from the beginning. So anyway, thank you for the question. Loud and Queer. So the Queering the Way is actually an anthology of other people's work, but it's really beautiful. What do you give me the thumbs up about? I can't remember what I just said. Jason Kenney, whatever. So what an asshole. Although I got to say, I never thought anyone would make me miss Jason Kenney, but Daniel Smith is making it hard to sort of let go. So just context is everything, right? So yeah, Queering the Way is basically other people's work, but the forward is a fascinating piece of Edmonton queer history. And then Tornado Magnet is a play about my life as a kid growing up at the trailer court through my mom's eyes. And then the Edmonton Queen, I will read you a little bit of that right now. The short answer is none of the stuff I've read so far has been published, but if you are all interested in reading any of that stuff, I am more than willing to send the files to Larry and he can distribute it to anyone that wants to read some of these plays.
Thank you for that.
Here's a little, yeah,
generous.
excellent. No, I have no problem sharing the work, because you might even recognize some of the stories in it from your own experiences, because we've all been around for so long now. The other thing about With Bells On is now it has been turned into a musical by a team in New York. They're having trouble getting New York producers on board to produce it, because everybody in New York started producing theater last year, and then the more lockdowns happened and theaters lost a whole bunch of money because they basically opened up too soon. And so Dev Janke, the creator of the musical, called me up a while ago and said, do you think we could do a debut in Canada? So it's not official yet, but here's my little sneak preview. Next Christmas, like next December 2023, at the brand new Roxy Theater, with any luck, you'll be seeing the world premiere of the New York musical production of With Bells on the Roxy stage. And it'll make its Canadian world premiere. So it's so beautiful. There's actually, I can send you some links to a couple of the songs that they wrote for the show that they used as a little sort of promotional thing for the reading they did last year. And the one song is called Fabulous, and it makes me cry every time. It's so gorgeous. It's just, yeah, they did really beautiful work. It takes a huge leap of faith to let someone else kind of explode your work and inject their own imagination into it, but I'm so glad I did. Larry, how much time do we actually have left? I forget how long this session is.
We've got about 10 minutes, 9 minutes.
Okay.
We will aim to end at noon. Why do I think we should close with your voice, and then if there are any other questions, we can
All right.
deal with.
I'm going to look up for, I'm going to just open up the Edmonton Queen, because I don't know, have I ever read pieces of the Edmonton Queen for you guys?
No, you have not.
Oh, well, so okay, so this one is published if you want to find it. I just have to find the right file name. Hang on a second. Edmonton Queen Rescue is what it's called. There it is. Oh my goodness. Okay, what should I read? Should I read the opening, or should I read one of the stories within it? Okay, I'm going to start at the top. And this is all true as well. Every once in a while, a queen is born. Whether through osmosis or immaculate misconception is still mostly a mystery, but they appear. Suddenly, and without warning, a new pretender to the throne stands in front of you. But where do they come from? Gender-fuck meteors flaming to earth? Cross-dressers crawling from every crevice in the country? Often they mutate out of men from the most macho of environments, but what triggers it? Well, for many, the transition is as swift as it is brutal and final, and it happens once a year. Every year on October 31st, thousands of young prairie men cross the line on the one night when they were actually permitted to do so. They cross the line that was drawn in the sandbox in front of them at the age of 2, the line that shapes their thinking, their manner, their insecurities, their stress, their career, their lives, their perception. On Halloween, they cross that line, and for one night, they know. They put on a dress. And every year, some of these men don't return. Because once they're on the other side, the world looks different and they get hooked. Whether it's because the world is too drab and hopeless, or because there are too many shackles, or because someone said no one too many times, or because you're too femme to fit, or because it makes your cock hard, or just because you're too fabulously stylish and dramatic for your own good, you try it, you love it, you buy it. Not just the outfit, the life. You fall in love with the woman in you. And the man you thought you were will do anything to make her dreams come true. It can happen to any man. Trust me. Now, when I do this play, just a little to make the next part make sense, I do it with a throne, and I'm surrounded by thousands of photos of all the drag queens from Flashback in Edmonton all over the floor. These are my snapshots. Now, if this were my mother's photo album, everything would be blown up to portrait size, mounted under sticky cellophane in chronological order with little ballpoint labels telling you who's who. But this is my family album. They're just snapshots because at the time, I didn't think a full portrait was necessary. They're just snapshots, a little out of focus because it was all moving pretty fast. They're just snapshots, but there's thousands of them, overflowing, spilling out of boxes and basements, shining perfect moments, frozen forever, like the river in winter. This is not a riverboat story. It's our story, the lucky ones. And it's all true, mostly. Let's just say I didn't have to make anything up. All I had to do was remember, like I could ever forget. None of the names have been changed because there are no innocents, but occasionally the outfits I describe are nicer than what we were actually wearing. The 80s sashayed past us in a crinoline haze, a cloud of dreaming bigger than anyone ever should. Foam and fur and feathers and false lashes. It was like living backstage with the Muppets, only they were more realistic. And we used way more foam. Delusions of grandeur dressed by Value Village. Our enormous visions, these tiny gowns. Now, why should you listen to the story of our lives? Well, because they're fabulous, darlings. Once upon a time. Isn't that how all fairy tales start? So that's the opening chapter. I'm going to jump forward. Basically, after that, I leave Rocky Mountain House. I move to Edmonton. And then I discover Flashback for my very first time. And I met a drag queen named Lulu who changed my life. If you read The Edmonton Queen, you'll read all about Lulu and I and our lives together. And another queen that was very famous back then was Ms. Flashback 6. His name was Trash. His real name was Terry Robinson. And he was one of the first drag queens in Edmonton to actually get his face in the media a lot. Wayne Krause from Page 6 in the Edmonton Sun would write about Trash all the time. In fact, the very first Halloween show I ever saw in 1982, Trash was the reigning Ms. Flashback, and he was supposed to be in that show. But when the Mr. Flashback, who was choreographing it, wouldn't let him play Marilyn Monroe for the big final number, he quit and resigned in a huff and hung the crown on David Hennessy's apartment door. And Wayne Krause in Page 6 actually wrote about it as if it was news. The reigning Ms. Flashback has stepped down. She's refusing to do the Halloween show. So Trash was a total character. He was also fearless about taking drag out in public. And so on Halloween, he would do things like go to Earl's in drag, because that was the one night when you could go out in drag and not get beat up, right? So he was very brave about taking drag out into public. And so this next story is a totally true story. And this is where I realized how fucking ballsy Trash was as a drag queen. So I'm just fast forwarding through the document here to find the story. By this time, Lulu and I were inseparable. We were drag sisters for life. And Trash was kind of our great auntie, crazy aunt. We all ended up moving in together into a house called Walla Walla West, up by La Marchand Mansion. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through a document. I'm almost there. Scrolling takes so long when you're waiting. There we are. Okay, here we go. True story, remember. And this actually happened right outside Flashback on 103rd Avenue. And you'll understand, I think, when I read it. Okay. One day, in one of our rare daylight moments, Lulu and I sat on a low brick wall watching the endlessly boring K-Days parade schlep past. It was about to rain, as it always did, and we were bored, as we usually were. We passed a joint back and forth, giggling about how funny straight people are when they try to stage a big event. The most glamorous thing we had seen so far was the Klondike Kate convertible, and frankly, we had better fashion sense. But suddenly, we heard a scream from about 3 blocks away. Not a scream of fear or warning, as much as a scream of announcement of arrival. Everyone around us looked in the direction of the scream. She was walking towards us in a drugged-out crinoline cloud, feathers in her hair, dress cut down to there, a banner across her foamies that read, Klondike Queen. Oh my God, it's Trash. Lulu and I screamed madly. Trash heard us screaming as she joined us on the wall. I did a hit of acid and decided it was a good day for a parade. Who knew there was one already happening? So I just joined in. Girl, you should have seen that cute boy I had my picture taken with back there. Now, I was skeptical. I never thought Trash looked that convincing. But as I sat there disbelieving, Lulu shushed both of us. Shh, jocks in convertibles, 3 o'clock. A moment of reverent silence as the beefcake float drove closer. They were Oilers, or Eskimos, or something butch like that. I've never been able to tell them apart. But just as they got to, about here, Trash screams, hi, honey, give a girl a lift. Now the jocks all look in her direction and wave, and then one of them motions for her to get in the car. That's my cue, see you later. She jumped off the low wall, navigated through a bunch of kids, and then trotted as fast as she could manage after the motorcade, as Lulu and I sat silent, our jaws hanging wide open. Now, the jock's face changed expression gradually as Trash drew closer. Remember, distance is a girl's best friend. Up-close drag reality in broad daylight is a sobering experience. No one can blend that well. By the time the jock figured out what he was dealing with, it was too late. Trash had climbed into the convertible and sat high on the back, waving like the perfect pageant winner. Short of physically tossing her onto the asphalt, there wasn't a lot he could do. As they drove away, we saw Trash put her gloved hand on the jock's knee. The jock did nothing, just sat staring straight ahead as his buddies howled with laughter. Lulu and I sat in awe. "You go, girl," we whispered with admiration. Silently, we saluted, giving the royal wave. Hat 2-3, purse 2-3, pearls 2-3, wave, and rest. True story. I can walk you down 103rd Ave, and I can actually show you the low brick wall that we were sitting on. It's still there.
A good story, and your timing, of course, is impeccable since we're exactly at noon. So I'll remind the organizers, and Darrin, if you wish to sign out and come back in again if we want a short debriefing. Let me remind you, I hope we see you all next week when Heather Noel from Metro Cinema will be our speaker. So, Darrin, marvelous. Thank you.
My deepest apologies for being tardy. I hope I made up for that.
You more than made up for it. You more than made up for it.
I'll give you an extra 15 minutes next time. How's that? And I will send you some scripts that you guys can totally go through at your leisure.
Thank you again for that, and we'll see you all next week. I hope.
Have a great day, everybody. Anyone? Oh, just looking to see if there's anything. Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you all. It's always a pleasure. Have a good day. Stay warm.
I know.